Hi everyone, I'm Natalie from HR.com and welcome to Inspire 2020. We're happy that you could join us for this webcast, How Chatbots Can Boost Training and HR Initiatives, sponsored by Mobile Coach and presented by Vince Han. This webcast has been pre-approved for 1 HRCI credit and 1 SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. If you have questions during the webcast, simply click the Q&A in your webinar controls and type them in there. I will also be posting a link to the exit survey in the chat area, and the presentation slides will be available in the archived version of this webcast on HR.com under Archived Webcasts. And now it is my pleasure to turn it over to Vince.
Thank you, Natalie. Hi, everybody. Thank you for that intro. I'm so excited to share this topic with you all today on how chatbots can boost training and HR initiatives. As Natalie mentioned, please, if you have questions, which I imagine you might, because I'll be talking about a lot of interesting chatbot design issues. Please use the Q&A or the chat. I've invited 3 of my chatbot design experts to be panelists. So they'll be watching the Q&A and can answer really any question that you might have that comes up. So I encourage you to do that. So we're going to talk about chatbots today. We're actually going to try out a couple chatbots together. We're going to even design the beginnings of your own HR-related chatbot. So we're going to have a lot of fun. We will wrap up right at 1:50 Eastern, and so we've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Let me start by introducing myself a little bit. You might see there's a little bit of an age difference between my picture on the slide and how I currently look. So I want to explain that just for a minute, but I would also love to connect with all of you, invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a QR code there to my LinkedIn or the URL there. I've actually already spent some of my weekend reaching out to some of you that have registered to connect on LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn, I like to post about entrepreneurship, chatbots, just sort of things as I go through building these types of technologies. So would love to share some of that with you and see what you're up to as well. The reason I put this picture of me in grade school on this slide as an introduction is that this is actually a picture of me about the age where I built my first chatbot. And in the early 80s, you might say, well, what are you talking about? So when I was in grade school, I was, I excelled fairly well in math. And by the time I was in the 6th grade, I was doing math on my own in the hall because I was a little bit ahead of the curriculum in my school. And at that time, my school was so gracious enough where they bought their first computer and then let me use it and try to learn how to program it for my math class, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Yes, I was a proud nerd in grade school and maybe continue to be a proud nerd. And so they gave me a basic manual, like how to program in BASIC. Hey, just do a quick shout out in the chat if you've ever programmed in BASIC. Love to see if you've done that. Oh, looks like someone's saying that they can only view my desktop and not the slides. Is that true for everybody else? Let me try to see if I can fix that. Share. Maybe I'll stop sharing. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I'm gonna try this again. How does that look? Can please also shout out in the chat if you can see my slides now instead of just my desktop. Is that working? Great, thank you. All right, so they gave me a manual on how to program in BASIC, and BASIC was basic. Really, you learned how to program if-then statements. And so in my quest to try to be at least a funny nerd and get some friends, I decided to program a game. And so during my math class, I programmed a game, and then one by one, my classmates could come out and had their turn on the new computer and try it out. And basically, the game that I programmed was a chatbot. It was a math quiz because it was math class. And so when my classmate got in front of the computer and typed in something, the computer said, "Hello, what's your name?" They would type in their name and says, "Well, hello, Vince, it's nice to meet you. I'm going to give you a math quiz." And it would walk them through this conversational user interface and give them a math test. So I like to share this because it's very interesting that just human nature, when we get with technology, for some compelling reason, we want technology to to be like a human, to sort of mimic that human user experience. And that really is what a chatbot, the definition of a chatbot, it's a computer program designed to simulate conversation with human users. Now, we have this fascination with computers to be able to do this. And in fact, that fascination is really taken a whole new level, it's taken to a whole new level by Hollywood. Those of you might remember HAL from the movie 2001 Space Odyssey. You can think about Jarvis from Iron Man, the movie Her. In fact, if you can think of some AI chatbot personality from Hollywood or from a movie you've seen, put that in the chat too. I'd love to see what comes to mind. In the movies, when they portray a chatbot or some sort of artificial intelligence, it's always way smarter than reality, right? Like if you think about Jarvis from Iron Man, you can actually have an in-depth conversation, or at least Iron Man could, with Jarvis. And if you've had experiences with personal assistants, even with sponsored and built by large technology companies today, like Google Assistant or Apple Siri or Amazon's Alexa, you know that they are really pretty seriously limited when it comes to actually holding a human-like conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit about that dynamic today. Well, if that's the case, then how can chatbots really be useful, especially within an HR and training context? So that's a key point to remember today. So for today's conversation, it's not about futuristic imaginations of AI, but realistic implementations of chatbots to really help our organizations. So I'm going to do a quick poll here. And Natalie's so helpful to help me with getting these polls set up. But let's do a quick poll here. Does your HR organization currently utilize chatbots? If you answer yes, please put in the chat a description of what type of chatbot it is. So we'll just give everybody a minute, or just a few seconds actually. It's a very easy poll question to answer this. And I'm kind of scanning through the chat too, and oh yes, I was a big fan of Kit from Knight Rider. Thanks for that suggestion. So the poll results, 88% of you are saying no, and 8% or 12% of you said yes. So for you 12%, if you could just quickly give us a sense of what type of chatbots you're using, that I think would be helpful for people attending this webinar to see what's going on. Okay. Next, we're going to try a couple chatbots. Now, I put in a QR code here. For those of you that don't have your phones with you, I'm actually going to have one of my panelist colleagues put in the chat other instructions if you don't want to use the QR code. But there are 3 options here for you to try a chatbot. The first is an SMS option. Just to note that if you try this option, data and text messaging rates apply. And basically, if you point your phone at this QR code, it will open up a text message and pre-populate a keyword. And all you got to do is hit send, and you can try that out. And the reason we're taking some time to try out these chatbots is that this will help you as you experience this. And I go through sort of the best practices of designing a chatbot. It will help you sort of have some broader context. For those of you that use Microsoft Teams, this middle one is a chatbot that will teach you, it's like a mini course to teach you about unconscious bias, which is a very apropos given the world's dynamic today. So you could try that, and there's a link that's in the chat now. You can see a Microsoft Teams link if that's easier for you to click on. And this third chatbot is just a web widget that will open up on a web page for you, and it's a conversation simulator. So all 3 are very different types of user experiences. You're welcome to try all 3 or choose one. You're welcome not to choose any either. But it would be helpful for you to just to get a sense of these chatbots as we go through the presentation. So my colleague Casey Sullivan is putting in the links again on the chat. If you have any technical issues or questions trying out these chatbots, please drop it in the chat and let us know what's going on. But I would love for you to try these out. I'm going to move on with the presentation. And again, if you need these links or you're scrambling to get your phone to shoot the QR code, you just go look into the chat. For those of you watching the recording, you can always just hit pause and get your phone and try these out as well. So hopefully these will be interesting for you to try out. And we're going to talk now a little bit about Chatbot Modes. Now, when you Google chatbot and you want to do some research about chatbot, the vast majority of things that you'll find about chatbots will be what's called machine learning chatbots. And machine learning chatbots are exactly what the definition there implies. It's a machine that's algorithmic, that's trying to learn based on all the interactions that it has with users to become smarter over time. So there's an algorithmic approach to match the user's query with the right response. And for it to get smarter, it really relies on a ton of, really the more volume of interactions, the better. We're talking about millions, if not tens of millions of interactions to get smarter over time. When a chatbot cannot understand what a user says, which happens all the time, I'm sure all of you have experienced that when you've been talking to a chatbot or when you're talking to a virtual assistant, you say something that it stumps the chatbot. It's actually not hard to do. That is something called a bot exception. And in the machine learning chatbot world, a bot exception is actually part of the algorithm. In fact, to some extent, it actually relies on bot exceptions to get smarter over time and to say, oh, that was a wrong response. And so now that I know that, I can be smarter the next time. So that's a machine learning chatbot. Typically, machine learning chatbots are consumer focused. They're typically passive, meaning they're waiting for the user to initiate with a question or an inquiry, and then that's typically the user experience a machine learning chatbot caters to. On the other side of the spectrum is something called a programmatic chatbot. And the demos that I just presented to you, the three options that we just tried out, are examples of programmatic chatbots. These are scripted approaches. So rather than having a computer try to figure out the answer that is best based on the algorithm, some author, in many cases an organization like yours, is pre-scripting what the chatbot should say for some specific business purpose. Today, we're going to talk about business purposes around HR and training, but there could be other business purposes like, customer support based on a specific methodology, or to answer your specific questions about your specific product. Things that you don't want a machine making up, but you want to be very specific about how the chatbot's answering that customer. And in cases where a chatbot is a programmatic chatbot, you want a very deliberate bot exception workflow. So for machine learning, where you're saying, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of bot exceptions for the machine to get smarter, over in a programmatic chatbot, actually you want to take care of each bot exception so that you're ensuring that the target user is getting their issue resolved, and it's not going into some algorithm. So those are some of the basic differences between programmatic chatbots and machine learning chatbots. One is not better than the other. They're just different. And based on the business requirement of what you're looking for, you can choose the correct mode for you. The vast majority of HR and training use cases belong in the programmatic chatbot world, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. And again, just a quick reminder for those of you that have questions that come up, if I'm going too fast or if there's something that you want more information on, please do drop in a question in the Q&A and we'd be happy to answer your questions. So I'm going to talk about three principles first of why chatbots. Why would chatbots be an option to start with, given that we just talked about that the chatbots of Hollywood are sort of a dream, and the existing level of technology for chatbots certainly does not match what we see on the big screen. But no matter what type of chatbot you use, there are three main reasons why chatbots are useful, and I'm going to go over those now. The first is immediacy. Look, we live in a world of instant gratification. That's something that Google has taught us. Do you remember the days when if we wanted to learn something, we actually had to physically go out and seek the information, like go to the library, and hopefully the library would have the resource that we're looking for? Those are the days that I grew up when I was in school. No longer, right? So we have this mentality where if we need to know something, we can get instant access to that through Google or through search or just through technology. So take a moment and think about the increasingly large digital native population coming into the workforce. They have this expectation of immediacy. And so if you have systems that are antiquated, that's going to be a disconnect for your workforce. I was talking with someone just last week who mentioned that if one of their managers had a question, they actually had to go to some spreadsheet and do a search in the spreadsheet. And it was a very, antiquated, wasn't even a database as a job aid for the managers. And so lots of organizations struggle with having antiquated tools and trying to catch up. And certainly that's going to be more and more required as consumers are also coming into the workforce and have this expectation for immediacy. And so chatbots, that's what they do. They deliver immediacy. And sometimes I'm asked, do people really want to talk to a computer? Don't people want to talk to a human being? The answer is yes and no. People are happy to talk to a computer if you can deliver immediacy. A chatbot can be a lot faster than a human being, especially if you've got lots of people that you're trying to cater to. And so the answer is absolutely, people are more than happy to talk to a chatbot if you can deliver that. The second reason why chatbots are useful is because they're so easy to use. So a chatbot is basically something called, it's designed based on a design principle called conversational user interface. Now, most user interfaces are rich media based with menus and buttons and usernames and passwords. And all of those, elements of a rich media app actually require a little bit, or actually introduce a lot of friction into the user experience. Like, where do I go again? And what's my username and password? And I'm confused about this screen. What am I supposed to click? All of those things sort of add to the cognitive load when people are trying to use the software. Everybody knows how to message. Even people of a more seasoned generation, I'll say, have learned how to message using their smartphones or even on the computer. And messaging and conversation is super easy. There's no cognitive load when I'm just trying to message somebody. And so ease of use introduces a frictionless user experience, and that translates into greater user engagement. And that is a huge premium when it comes to leveraging technologies to help influence an audience, either to help train them or to help them. So ease of use is a huge reason why chatbots are useful. So these first two principles, immediacy and ease of use, are reasons why consumers like to use chatbots and use chatbots. The third reason you'd want to use chatbots has everything to do to benefit you and your organization, and that's with scalability. Hey, chatbots don't go to sleep. They can have thousands of conversations at once. They can cater to people all over the world in every time zone, and all sort of these issues that organizations struggle with when it comes to deploying human resources. You can automate a lot of that with chatbots. And so the larger the organization and the more complex organization that you have, the more that a chatbot can help you scale your existing resources across your organization. So those are the three main reasons why you'd want to use chatbots to start with. So now we're going to talk about some examples of chatbot use cases in HR and training. The first I want to talk about is onboarding. This is, I have here on the slide that onboarding is useful to help new hires get up to speed, both logistically and culturally. But also this can apply to onboarding of new managers or onboarding to any new job. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new hire. And the reason why I think chatbots are really valuable for onboarding is that, when I'm onboarding either as a new hire or a new manager, the learning curve is steep. There's a lot to learn in a short period of time. Traditionally, a lot of onboarding programs include an orientation, which I could describe as going into a room, hooking yourself up to a fire hose, and having to guzzle way more information than you're able to process. That's not very effective. We all know that, and sometimes we feel like our hands are tied, and really that's the only option we have. Not true. With a chatbot, you can actually drip the information that people need over time at a pace that's natural for them to learn. And not only examples of content of what they're supposed to do with their job, but you can also help them with cultural acclimation. There was a wonderful chatbot user experience I learned about from one of the leading consulting firms a couple of years ago, where one of the most interesting things they found with their chatbot is that women were asking the chatbot what the protocol was or the culture was in terms of wearing makeup in the office. And found that very interesting because there was a type of question where they felt more comfortable asking a chatbot because it was more anonymous than asking and maybe feeling some risk in asking a manager or a human being when they had that type of question. So there are actually a lot of really interesting use cases where people will prefer to talk to a chatbot when maybe the topic is a little bit more sensitive or personal, and you can take advantage of that dynamic. So you can also think about using a chatbot for onboarding even before the new hire starts. And so when someone accepts a job offer, or maybe even when they're interviewing, you can have a chatbot help them get to the accepting a job offer, and the time between accepting the job offer and when they start, you can have the chatbot helping them get ready. And so, wonderful applications there in terms of what a chatbot can do to help with onboarding. The next example is actually having a chatbot do the training and doing the teaching. And now this is a particularly pertinent today with this global pandemic that's going on, and at least for a time, and still today for many organizations, there's just not the ability to get together for face-to-face training. And so a lot of organizations have scrambled to go to virtual delivery of training. Not everyone is in a position to to access like a traditional e-learning course, maybe based on their job function, or maybe they don't have access to a computer, or other challenges like that. So there are use cases where actually a chatbot can be the alternative training delivery channel. Let me show you actually a quick example of that. So here's an example of a screenshot of a chatbot that's teaching something. And I won't go through and read this. I'll let you read this on the screen. But you can imagine teaching a concept, linking out to videos, linking out to elements in your learning management system, perhaps, where just through a conversation, either on the mobile phone or on a chatbot on a computer, I can learn something through a conversation. And that actually, can take advantage of the immediacy, can take advantage of the ease of use, and take advantage of the principle of scalability, as I was talking about. So consider using chatbots to actually deliver training. Can be a great use case. The next example is using chatbots as a follow-up tool. Now, this can go hand to hand with training. You can have chatbots deliver the training, but you can also have chatbots be a really effective reminder tool, as well as an accountability tool. Think about any use case that you might have where you've got sort of a spaced learning design for a program, whether it's an onboarding program or whether it's an actual formal leadership training program, or sort of maybe you've got a job skills or some sort of soft skills training that's done over time. So you can have a chatbot be smart about both the content, and you can have the chatbot be smart about the schedule of the training, and you can have the chatbot be smart about individual learners' preferences. And if the chatbot's smart about those three things, it can be programmed to send really effective reminders, like, hey, the next space learning webinar is a week from now. Vince, you said you were going to do these three things to prepare. Have you done that? So, what a great use case to help people be accountable, to remind them that this is going on, and help accentuate that learning journey. So chatbots for follow-up can be incredibly powerful, especially when reinforcement and follow-up are critical to your overall investment in whatever program that one of your people in your workforce is going through. So here's an example of that, of what a reminder could look like. So this is an example of maybe having a chatbot teaching someone about unconscious bias and diversity and inclusion. So that is the follow-up. The last category of example for chatbots I want to go over is what I call assist. And so the first three, so the onboarding, the teaching, and the follow-up, are examples of a programmatic chatbot that's programmed to proactively initiate a conversation. Like, hey Vince, it's day 5 of your company, of your journey in our company. How's it going? Or for the teach, hey, here's a quick quiz today. And the follow-up, as I mentioned, hey, the next webinar is next week. Are you ready for it? The assist bucket is more passive. This is where you've got a chatbot available at someone's fingertips when they need it. And so you can give your people the answers they need when they need it. This could be menu-based. You can introduce this type of chatbot so that I know that if I get stuck or if I need a job aid or if I have a question, you can just go to a chatbot. Examples of use cases in the assist category could be, what about a chatbot that acts as an HR concierge? And so I just know that if I've got a question about benefits, or I'm trying to find a form, or maybe I'm trying to locate, the phone number of someone in a different department, I know that I can probably go find it in an HRIS system somewhere. But if that feels too hard to do, if I can just ask the chatbot, that could be a really frictionless user experience. So other examples I've heard that I really like around the assist bucket are, there's this idea of an acronym bot. A lot of companies have so many acronyms, and you get overwhelmed with what certain acronyms mean. What if I could just ask a chatbot, hey, I heard about this acronym in this meeting. I was embarrassed to ask what it was, and so what does it mean? And to have the chatbot deliver that instantaneously could be a really interesting value to people. So that's the assist bucket. And here's an example of what an assist chatbot could look like through the mobile phone, where a user is saying, hey, menu, and then the chatbot saying, okay, here are 4 things I can do for you. Which one are you in need of? So that's example of the assist. Okay, so I'm going to launch the next poll, and this poll is, what use cases out of those 4 that I mentioned do you think are most valuable for your organization? Is it onboarding, teaching, follow-up, assisting, or other? Maybe there's a bucket that I didn't cover. So we'd love for you to take a minute and just let us know which of these do you really feel like would be most valuable for your organization. And as we see the poll results, as you vote, it'll be interesting as a group just to see where the needs are. Again, where are the needs for a chatbot to help with scalability, with ease of use, with that immediacy? Maybe you have a younger workforce that has, that you're struggling to cater to, or maybe you have a worldwide global workforce where it's been, it's a challenge to reach everybody. So please, everybody, take this poll, and we'll see what everybody says. And we'll publish the poll results. All right, so pretty interesting. It looks like it's fairly even across the board. Assisting came number 1, but barely above onboarding, and then teaching and follow-up were tied. So that's really interesting. Thanks for participating in that poll. So we're now going to pivot to talking about chatbot design best practices. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because we have a really fun chatbot group design exercise that I want to make sure we get to. So I've got, I think, 7 tips I'm going to share, and I'll run through these pretty quickly. If you've got questions about any of these tips, please drop a question in the Q&A or in the chat. So first of all, understanding your users. And so one of my panelists, Paul Bills, on our call today, always likes to remind our team that when you're building a programmatic chatbot and you're having the chatbot proactively interact with your target audience, that message is always an interruption. And so you want to make sure that the messages that the chatbot's sending feel valuable. And to do that, you need to understand your users. You need to understand what's their work environment. Are they in front of their computer all day? Are they on their feet all day? What are sort of their expectations in terms of messaging as part of their job function? And what do they most need? Do they need support with skills? Do they need access to help? Do they need accountability? Do they need follow-up? And so understanding your users is key to designing the chatbot that's going to be most valuable to them. So that's the first tip. The second tip, if I can move my slides, is to set clear user expectations. And so, if you don't take the time to set the user expectation, you're going to risk over-promising with the chatbot. You know how I talked earlier about how Hollywood has set these really grand expectations about what AI can do. So many people, if you don't set expectations, will expect the chatbot to do more than it can. So you might, let's say that you've got a chatbot supporting onboarding for your organization. If you don't set proper expectations, don't be surprised for users to ask the chatbot random questions like, what's the purpose of life, or how many miles is it from here to the moon? Things that it's out of the scope of the chatbot. So to set clear user expectations, I've got some very specific tips for you. First, tell the people what the chatbot's purpose is. You can tell the people how long the user experience will be, especially for programmatic chatbots. People will hesitate to say, oh, am I going to get automated messages for the rest of my life or the rest of my time here at this company? So no, you set, well, here's what the chatbot purpose is, and here's how long the chatbot's going to interact with you, and here's sort of the frequency of messages that the chatbot is going to say. Here are a couple of examples. So I think examples are always really helpful. So these are some really solid examples of your first interactions with these respective chatbots, and how they're setting expectations for the user. So take a look at this, take some screenshots of these if you'd like. We're actually going to take a turn at writing some of our own messages here in a moment, so these can be useful resource for you as well. So setting clear user expectations is a critical part of chatbot design. Next, choose the best channel. And what I mean by this is that chatbots can be deployed on lots of different types of channels. In fact, I have a slide on this. Chatbots can be, you saw this with the demo options earlier in the presentation. I gave you an SMS version, I gave you a Microsoft Teams version, I gave you a web-based version. Chatbots can be on all those channels. They can be on popular messaging apps like Facebook Messenger. I mentioned Teams and Slack and Zoom. Those of you, we're on Zoom today. Those of you that are regular users of Zoom know that there are chatbots available there as well. So a key principle in choosing the best channel for HR and training initiatives is, again, you want to try to make things as frictionless as possible. So wherever your people are interacting with their friends and family, that's the very best place for a programmatic chatbot. So if I'm in the United States and I'm using SMS to text my friends and family, to have a chatbot on SMS, you're going to just get the best user engagement. Now, if my organization has rolled out Teams, I'm always on Teams, having a chatbot on Teams is just a click away, so it's frictionless. Now, the caveat here is sometimes you're not able to do what's most frictionless because of policies and regulations in your company. So for example, if I'm a truck driver and I'm texting with my friends and family over SMS, it's likely that the company will not allow me to SMS for work-related issues, for liability, of course, which makes sense. And so you have to juggle sort of the constraints of what your organization will allow with that frictionless nature and try to find the best chatbot channel. Sometimes that just means you're going to have a web widget on a learning management system or your HRIS system. And sometimes maybe your organization will allow a chatbot to be on a consumer app like Facebook Messenger or SMS. If you've got questions about your situation and what the best channel might be for you, either drop us your scenario in the Q&A and we'll try to help diagnose the best channel for you, or drop me a line. I'd be happy to help you. Sometimes this can be the toughest decision to navigate, sort of to balance the frictionless nature with compliance. The next tip is chatbots should have a personality, even though it is robotic. You never want to deceive people and try to trick them to think, gee, am I exchanging messages with a robot or a real person? That's something we don't recommend. We recommend being very transparent about, hey, you're interacting with a chatbot. That said, you can give the chatbot a personality. And that means giving the chatbot a name. Here are just some names of chatbots that I've seen used for HR and training. Give it a name, give it a personality. And again, tying back to the first tip about understanding your users, let's say that you're building an onboarding chatbot, and a lot of your new hires, or most of your new hires, are fresh out of college and certainly of a digital native demographic. You can be a little bit more hip. You can have a sense of humor that caters to sort of that demographic. If you've got a chatbot catering to more senior executive level type of audience, and of course the audience and the personality will take on a different tone. But definitely give it a personality, because that's going to lend itself to that conversational learning experience. The next tip is to utilize design iterations. So here, what's important about this is actually a very, very important tip, and I'll try not to belabor the point, but if any of you have been a part of a technology build project before, so either building an app or deploying a website into your organization, you know that change is hard. So if you design a user interface and then you want to change it later, that's actually a lot harder than it feels like it should be, right? Because you have to worry about version control and bugs that you're introducing, and it's just hard to iterate. With a chatbot, there is no user interface, and so it's a lot easier to iterate. So as you design your chatbot, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, if you don't mind me using that cliche. You can sort of go out with your first design of the conversation, see how that goes, get feedback, and it's actually very easy then to change it. So examples could be, maybe you say, hey, I want the chatbot to proactively send a reminder at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning to my target audience. Try that for a while, and then try it at 2 p.m. and see what the difference is. So those types of things are very easy to do. Normally, you know your audience pretty well, so your initial design is going to be pretty good, but not all your assumptions are going to be right. You're going to learn a lot. And so a chatbot allows you to iterate, take that learning, improve the assumptions that maybe weren't quite right, so that you can create a chatbot that has the maximum delight for your target audience. The next tip is to optimize personalization. Hey, the more personalized a message can feel to me, the more I'm going to value that message. And so the different sort of attributes to personalize a message could be understanding what the specific goals are of the user. So let's imagine a chatbot message coming to me to say, hey, Vince, I understand that you've taken this course and you have this specific goal. How's that going? It's going to feel a lot more valuable to me than some generic message. And so the more that you can understand the user's interests, their topics, their learner style, sort of when they're at work, and again, because it's technology based, you can make a chatbot smart enough to match those personalized attributes with that person, and then have those messages be super helpful. The last thing I'll say about this one is that chatbot technology also has the ability to hook into APIs to third-party systems. And that's a great way to have personalized messages. So let me give you an example of that. Let's say that you've got a learning management system, and I can log in there and take a particular course. Imagine a chatbot congratulating me on finishing that course. Hey, Vince, I just noticed you finished, Compliance 101. For your job function, you're also required to take 102 and 103, and here are the links to those courses. That's highly personalized. And another example could be for onboarding, where if the chatbot's plugged into your HRIS system, imagine a chatbot sending me a really fun animated GIF at my 30-day mark, like, hey, Vince, you've made it 30 days into your new job. Congratulations. Here's a link to a little gift card, to go to the cafeteria and have lunch on us today, or something like that. So, things like that, where you can hook into the chatbot with other systems, can make your chatbot super personalized. And my experience is that, again, the more personalized the messages, the more awesome it's going to feel. And the last tip I'm going to share with you, and I saw someone mention this in the Q&A, is to blend in human help. So there is something that I mentioned earlier called bot exceptions, where there will be sometimes inquiries that will come in that the chatbot's just not going to be prepared to answer. And so what's nice about a chatbot, it can provide immediacy in terms of acknowledging that person's question, to say, oh, hey, thank you for your question. That's something I'm not prepared to answer as the chatbot, but I'm going to make sure someone gets your question. Is this where they can reach you? So you can blend in a human help workflow into your chatbot design, so that humans, whether they're subject matter experts or HR specialists, or even someone's manager, can be plugged into the conversation that the chatbot's having with the user, to make sure that no one ever gets stuck and they get the help they need. Part of my talk today about chatbots isn't that everything can or should be 100% automated, but even if you have it 90% automated, there's a huge benefit to using chatbots. So if you have any questions about any of those tips, if you want to see some examples, please let me know, and happy to help. Now, I want to spend the last few minutes doing a chatbot design exercise with everybody. Hopefully you'll be game to do this. It's very short, easy, there's no pressure here. But what I have found is that if you could start writing some chatbot messages, the light bulbs really start going on in terms of the possibilities for your organization. So I'd invite you to try this out. You can either, if I could get one of the panelists to copy and paste this link into the chat. Oh, thank you, Casey, for already doing that. What this is going to do is going to create a little web widget, and I'm going to do it as well and walk you through this. So here it is. So look into the chat, because I've already now hiding my slide, so you can't see that URL anymore. But go to the chat, there's a link there, and you should get to see what I'm seeing here, which is a Build-A-Bot user interface. And you should get this message here from Alba. I'm Alba. Now, please let me know if you can't see my screen, since I just toggled from PowerPoint. Hopefully you can see my screen. And what this chatbot's going to do is going to help you walk through some of the best practices I just walked through, to choose a use case, to think about who your target audience is, to write your own introductory message, and then it's going to show you a link where you can see what everyone else is doing. So I think that will be really useful to compare notes. So please play along. It's only going to take a few minutes. And so, the chatbot's going to ask you for your name. You don't even have to give your real name if you don't want. Choose a use case here. Onboarding, teach, follow up, assist other. Just it'd be great to know what you'd be interested in. For me, I was testing this a little earlier, and I chose teach. And then you're going to briefly describe your target audience, and we're having you go through this exercise because by writing things down, it helps you focus your use case. But briefly, there's no right or wrong answer. Just describe the type of chatbot you're envisioning for your organization and who the target audience is. What's their demographic? What's their job function like? You see an example here: new hires straight out of college, working in front of a computer all day. And so I know that maybe it's hard to multitask and finish this chatbot experience and listening to me talk, but I'll just do some little color commentary as you go through this. So choose how long do you imagine a chatbot engaging this audience. I'll give you a couple benchmarks out there. When I see an assist chatbot, something like an HR concierge, this actually is always on. So the answer would be always, because it's there as a resource all the time. If you're imagining an onboarding chatbot, typically I see an onboarding chatbot that's programmatic, lasts anywhere between 30 days to 90 days, the first month to 3 months of someone, helping them get acclimated to their new job. If I'm designing a chatbot to teach something, that really depends on the difficulty of the course content. If I'm building a chatbot for training reinforcement, that's usually a couple months user experience. So you can see that for programmatic push type of chatbots, the user experience does not last forever. It normally takes 1 to 3 months for it to finish up, which makes sense, right? Because if the chatbot's doing its job, then people will know what they need to know, and then they won't need it anymore. So this next one's probably the hardest part of the assignment, and that is designing what your opening message is going to be. We provided a link here so you can see some examples. You can steal those examples if you want for this exercise, but if you could take some time and just think about, what would the chatbot say? Name your chatbot, give it a fun name, state the purpose of the chatbot, maybe set some expectations. So give that a try. And once you do that, then the chatbot should give you a link so you can see what everyone else is saying. And I'm just going to, in a minute here, click on that because it'd be kind of fun to see what some of you are writing. And then after that, after you have time to check out, there's one more example, which is totally optional, where you can actually write a sample interaction. So I'm going to click on this link and just see what people are saying. So here's an example here. Someone said onboarding for 90 days. Their audience is new hires. And hey, that's very simple. Great. The initial message, hello, welcome to our company. My name is Ace. I'm here to support you, provide reminders. Great. There's some other use cases here. HR managers. Oh, this is supporting a project HR certification program. My name is Lumi. a fun name. Hey, I got some Spanish here. That brings up a good point that chatbots, when I talked about chatbots being scalable, chatbots can also speak in multiple languages. So thank you for putting in some Spanish so I could remind me to mention that. Look at this, I'm Buddy Bookworm. That's kind of fun. Yeah, so you can kind of go in here and look at the different types of examples. Oh, like a bunch of you are doing this. Thank you for participating. You can click through and just see what some people's interactions are. That's fun. Great. So the last interaction here will be, you can go in and create a reminder message, and then the chatbot will actually give you a link to your script that you wrote if you want to keep this for notes. And something to build on if you start designing your own chatbot. So thanks for participating in that. So my time is almost up. If I look, I just have 5 minutes left. So I thought maybe I'll take the last few minutes to answer any questions. My panelists have answered most of your questions, but panelists too, if you've seen questions in the Q&A that you think would be good for me to elaborate on, please chime in, let me know, and we've got some time for some questions. Questions in the Q&A or in the chat, either one. So the question from Dr. John Matthew about important KPIs that chatbots can be measured by. So yeah, absolutely. So there are, of course, as with any KPIs or measurement, you've got quantitative data you can gather, and you have qualitative data you can gather. Now, at a high level, chatbots typically are there to reinforce some existing initiative. So that existing initiative should already have KPIs associated with it, and the chatbots can be one attribute in that whole sort of KPI calculation. So that's important to say. But for the chatbot component, the quantitative data you can measure is engagement, user engagement. So how many people have registered for the chatbot? When the chatbot asks a question, what are the response rates? Do people opt out of the chatbot, and if so, at what rate? And those that quantitative data you can compare against analogs like email or push notifications or reminders that come from a system like an LMS. And so those are quantitative data measures that are great to measure user engagement. And that user engagement should be positively correlated with whatever grander KPI is with the product that you're supporting. Qualitative can actually be equally important for chatbots because, again, part of the use of a chatbot or the reasons you want to use a chatbot are that immediacy and the ease of use. And so qualitatively asking people for a net promoter score, or just having some survey to ask people what they thought about the user experience, and have asked them from a workforce perspective, is this a more desirable means of communication than traditional channels like email and phone and employee call centers and things like that. So yeah, so those are some of the data points you can collect. That's a great question. Other questions? So there's a question from Valerie. If my company sets up a chatbot for new hires, coming to new hire orientation with several FAQs for questions that come in on a regular basis. Yeah, so that's a very common use case. So it brings to mind another best practice where if you think about where can I deploy a chatbot, think about within your organization, what are the conversations you're having over and over and over again, and that that can be defined as what are your organization's FAQs. So when it comes to new hire orientation, I'm sure there are 10 to 20 questions where you're answering over and over and over again. That should be a signal to you, like, hey, maybe a chatbot can be a great use case here, and the chatbot can automate those answers. That's a great sign for where a chatbot can be useful. Rosemary asks, if your company has never had a chatbot before, where do you begin? The first step is what we've done today, is identify a use case. If you just go to your organization and say, hey, I think we should use a chatbot, you're going to get all sorts of resistance, like, oh, why? And that sounds hard. And but if you can put together a business case to say, hey, we are spending this much resource in trying to answer the same questions over and over and over again. A chatbot's a way for us to automate that and scale that so that we can be more efficient, we can save money, and we can actually help with new hire, the churn rate and get speed to competency and all sorts of things to build a business case. That's where I would start. Think about where a use case could be most valuable for a chatbot and start there. I think we just have maybe, we're out of time. So if you do have questions that I didn't get to, please, there's my contact information, vince@mobilecoach.com. We'd be happy to answer questions that come our way. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking your time to join me in talking about chatbots and HR and training today.